Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Top Tier Tiers. This is Alfred Yang, Lachi Punit, and with me is my intrepid co-host and champion of BCS Anaheim, Thomas Im.
Oh, you spoiled it.
I
Yes.
did spoil it because it's also probably going to be in the video title anyway, so like that's neither here nor there. Um, Point is, you won Anaheim, big, which is a big accomplishment, and we'll definitely talk about it
Uh,
soon. But before we get to that, what's up with you? You're not recording from your usual location.
no, I'm currently being held hostage in a remote location by a Canadian known as Yue Pang.
Uh, yes, the much maligned owner of Strictly Broken TCG. He's been held hostage. Much like I was by a certain American not too long ago, and we can certainly talk about that. But after your victory at Anaheim, it sounds like you've gone on the road for a little while.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Canada um, till the 4th. That's when I come back. Um, Honestly, just nice to like. This is gonna be like a nice vacation, nice break before
Yeah,
I essentially start preparing for Worlds, I guess.
yeah. You spent a fair time testing. You picked a deck, got very familiar with it, got familiar with the matchups, and it paid off. Even though I have to say, by all rights, you should have lost in grand finals. I think that's like
Oh, we can
not.
definitely talk about that. I don't necessarily disagree, but that game was
Shout outs
yeah.
to Simu,
Yeah, shout
who
outs to Sima Wang, aka
is the
Chairman.
the NorCal friendly fire.
That's true.
But it.
Like we traveled all that way, played all those games just to replay locals
Hmm.
at in finals, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh yeah. So to give a very brief explanation as to why we haven't you know got any podcast out in the last, well, it's got to be more than a month now. Part of it was because I went to the States and I stayed with a bunch of friends, including Thomas, and we had a good time. We actually didn't play much Weiss. We played more Pokemon by my count, actually.
And ED and a bit of EDH.
EDH, yes. Thomas does not enjoy Magic nearly as much as myself and the other mates we stayed with. But he played, and kudos to him. It's not the most enjoyable format for everybody. We ate a lot of good food, had a lot of good times. We thought about doing a cast while there, but partially because of fatigue and partially because one or both of us got COVID, it
We
seems.
we both got COVID, yeah.
Yeah, I was positive 3 days before my flight back home, but the day before my flight back, I was negative, so they let me get on the plane, and yeah, that's good. But either way, it was a good vacation, a good chance to get away. I didn't get to stay for BCS Anaheim. I am technically an American citizen. I could have played in and claimed any prizes for that, but such is the life of a full-time worker.
Yeah, you could have you could have stopped me.
Quite possibly, quite possibly. But with that in mind, let's move on. We'll briefly talk about some of the news that's happened recently. We've gotten our first real Avatar spoiler. We haven't. I mean, we had a promo vanilla from one of the conventions, but that doesn't really count. We got a early play Katara, which I'm sure has a lot of Avatar fans quite excited. And today is, and we're giving away the date of recording, but it's a couple days before Christmas, and today is the release date of Azure Lane, the Japanese boat franchise. Not actually the first anthropomorphic boat franchise in Weiss, which is to longtime Weiss players, that's not actually a surprising statement, but to anyone else, that is a very strange statement. And it's shaping up to be another Hololive. I think that everyone is pretty on it day one. I think in a few days they'll fresh out the best builds and it'll slowly take its place in the mid to high tier of decks in Japanese locals.
I haven't been paying attention at all to any
No,
spoilers.
you've
But
you've got other stuff to look at, but it's a 150 card booster.
that I
It
did know.
is of normal like strength and size, and there are a couple of cool effects. So I find it hard to believe this will just not be a good set. Anyway, so that's the quick roundup for Weiss. we can just get straight into the tournament really. BCS Anaheim. So a quick primer on BCS Bushy Road Championship Series. This is the road to Worlds, so to speak. If in order to get a invite to the Worlds tournament held in Los Angeles early next year, you need to have placed very well at a Bushy Road Championship Series tournament, which was held all around the world, everywhere from the States to various parts of Europe to all the way down here in Australia. I could not play in mine because my flight was literally on the day of BCS because, uh, yeah, let's not talk too much about
Hmm.
that. Anyway, BCS Anaheim, how'd it go?
Um. Well, I mean, you spoiled
Uh,
it.
le- let's
I mean,
let, let let's not start there. Let's start your preparations and your deck choice. What did you
sure,
play and why did you play it?
sure. We're start with that. Okay, so I chose to play the quintessential quintuplets, the 8 standby deck, the Nino focus list. Um,
Can you play 8 standby without a Nino focus?
yeah, you can. Well, wait.
I don't think you
I think you
can.
can. They can. There's a Pence Nino combo.
But that's not 8 standby. No,
Wait.
no, no, no. Can you play standby without focusing on
Oh, can you
Nino?
play
I
standby without
know
focusing on
I,
Nino? Sorry.
I know you can play Nino waifu without like 8 standby. That was the set one deck and it was terrible, but I don't think you can play a good 8 standby Quints deck without
Right. I do
mostly Nino.
I do think Nino has all of the standbys. So yeah, sure. That is a good point. Though there are some very good non-Nino cards in the list. Why did I play it? Well, I thought the deck was quite good ever since it released in Japan. Ever since Set Two released in Japan, which was a while ago. It's been at least like a year and a half, I think, since it
Yeah.
released in the JP format. So I was, waiting for it, quote unquote, waiting for it to come to English, and it did. And I thought it'd be very strong for the format, and it turns out that it is very strong. I believe its topping percentage, top 8% in all the tournaments it's been legal for in BCS this year is kind of absurd. I think I feel like I see at least 2 to 3 Quints on almost every single top 8. There were 4 Quints players, 3 other than me in Anaheim's top 8. So yeah, I mean,
And
I thought
they were all
they
standby
were
too.
all 8 standby. Yes, there are some other variants of Quints builds that are that are strong, but I chose 8 standby because I thought that strategy was the strongest. Um, but yeah, I mean, I thought it
What
was
what does the strategy entail? Go over it very quickly.
sure. Yeah, it is an 8 standby concept, so the deck aims to play and trigger standbys as often as possible. Um, it plays for a game that is focused on attacking with good quality attackers every turn. Um, and its unique gimmick as a standby deck rather, is that its level 3 finisher doubles as a standby trigger in the deck when its climax is played to the climax zone, in addition to any other effects that the cards has. So, a lot of people refer to this lovingly as 12 standby Nino, um, uh, which isn't
Well,
exactly, it doesn't exactly play out that way, every game,
it's
but
not really. That's not really the goal of the deck. It just happens to be a facet of the deck.
yep. Um,
So sometimes it'll happen. It happens a lot in the end game for various reasons, but I think there are other reasons why 8 standby Nino is a standout 8 standby deck compared to the likes of like Fujimi Fantasia or Hololive, for example, which can
sure,
also
yeah.
play 8 standby.
Uh, yeah, I chose it because I thought it was one of the best decks in the format. I think it clearly has showed itself to be so. We can go over like specifics about what I think about the deck strategy, but maybe I don't know. I don't know what you want to do here. We can
Oh,
talk
I
more about
mean,
that, or
we can talk about the 1-1, we can talk about the 2-2 combo, and then we can just get into the tournament report,
sure.
probably.
The reason why I think the deck is strong, is that the deck can. So people familiar with 8 standby concepts in Weiss know that most standby decks attempt to get a 1/1 out at level 0. ideally by turn one. Like you open a standby and you discard a one copy of a 1/1 to the waiting room, then standby it out turn one. Quints has a rather unique 1/1 that cannot be reversed by cost zero cards, which uh, as well, and it also has access to like a conventional 7500 power hand on core 1/1. But the blue, this anti cost zero blue 1/1 is the preferred 1/1 in a lot of lists, and the reason why is because it just can't be killed. It just can't be reversed at all. At level zero, outside of some very extenuating circumstances, which makes it very safe to commit a climax play to, and also basically means it lives for a good 2 to 3 turns. It usually gets reversed to level 2, by which point it has given you many cards because it doesn't have to be replaced on the board every turn. I think that's the first part of the strategy that I think is strong. And then the second part is just it has a 2/2 that it gets out pretty consistently level 1, that it attacks for very big numbers. It can be hand on cord, and so that I think represents a lot of pressure that it places on the opponent, where it itself is not losing resources with the blue 1/1, and it is consistently reversing boards every turn with the big 2/2. I think that's the core of the strategy. It's kind of a resource denial strategy where uh, it presents cards that are very hard to answer, and in turn has answers for most boards that it plays against. Uh, there are other aspects, obviously, to the strategy that make it strong. I think, but I think those are more like generically strong. I think other decks have some of those elements, other elements that I did not talk about. But almost no deck, I think no deck in this format has these specific strengths, which are the blue 1/1 and the big 2/2 combined in one deck. So
Hmm. And I think without the combination of those two, it isn't actually a standout standby deck. It
I
does
would
have a
agree.
great level.
Yeah.
It has a great level zero suite. It has some really tricky level threes. But if it didn't have the 1/1, it would have a pretty mediocre matchup against, for example, Dunmachi,
Hmm.
Fate, certain types of Hololive would also have a decent matchup
Even
into it.
other standby decks, I think,
Yes.
would do fairly
Yeah.
poorly against. So
Yes, and without the 2/2, it would actually not be very good into other standby decks. You can kind of compensate for not having a good level 1 game by making sure you always kill their 2/2s and early plays with your 2/2 Nino, which can often be bigger, and oftentimes you have multiple of them. So it has been described as a standby deck that plays somewhat like a 1k 1 soul deck because it is very consistently going to be swinging for twos a lot of the game. And that is something that most other standby decks, regardless of their density of triggers, can't actually boast consistently. So I think that's a big reason why it is a tier 1 deck, alongside a fair number of other decks. It just has a very good matchup spread. I think it only has maybe one or two matchups that you wouldn't call even to favored. Like I think you're like even to versus Danmachi unfavored against TRV. Specifically deal well. I mean, I guess all builds of TRV are pretty good against you, and AOT is pretty good against you too. But other than that, it's a very good matchup spread, and it's a very good deck for getting into top eight. Of that, I have no doubt.
hmm
So that was your deck. Were there any specific matchups you were on the lookout for that made you want to play specific cards that would not be in every single list?
um, I mean, we can just talk about my. You just want to talk about my list then, or
That's a good thought. Do you want to bring up your list?
yeah, sure. Let me quickly change tabs. Okay, it's on the screen right
So
now.
the list is quite formulaic. And I'm not saying Tom's list. I'm saying the list that most people run. It's pretty standardized. Like maybe 42-ish of the cards are just fixed there. And the remaining eight of those, a lot of those are very standardized as well. It just really depends on specifically what cards you want to fill those last few slots with, like the counter suite. The level zeros are sometimes a little bit different. So what's different about your list?
Sure, I can quickly go over that. So the most notable card that people notice that is part of my list that is not standard is the 1/1 Ichika counter. Um, And we can talk about, I guess, like in general, I think level one counters are not that good in quintessential quintuplets in general in this eight standby concept. But um, what made me and I actually didn't have this in the list till around a month ago, and I've been playing this deck since it released in August, I think. And the main reason why I put it in was because I heard on the grapevine that a lot of people were playing stuff like the Connie, the 1-0 anti-encore Connie, or the 1-0 Hecor Shion? Hecora? It was a 1-0 blue card in Hall Live that bottom decks on reverse. I read, I was seeing a lot of that being theory crafted around like a month ago or so. And obviously, I'm sure people were talking about those cards beforehand, but specifically about AOT, that a card attacks at 7,500 power with the climax, and so I mainly wanted this counter to defend my 2/2 uh, from anti-encore cards, as well as this 1/1 I'm playing, because a big strength of this deck is being able to maintain what I like to call board permanence, which is keeping your high quality attackers on the board via encore or just by winning the lane. So while the level one counter is not exactly what I call a great card, it is a card that I was searching for. I was searching for like an answer to this problem, like people trying to get rid of my cards, get rid of my hand on core cards. So the counter presents its counter is something that I was looking for around that time, and I found this card. I think it's probably the best level one counter the deck can run. I know a lot of people were running actually the blue 1-0 Nino counter from set one, but I think that card is not good. And the main reason is because while this Ichigo counter costs stock, I think the ability to salvage and replace itself is extremely good in a deck that is kind of limited when it comes to selection. I'm sure a lot of Quints players have run into the issue where they are they heavily rely on the Nino Brainstorm for selection in the mid game. Or not just mid game, like all the time, the entire game basically. And speaking to that, I mean, there's another card that I'm not running that I think a lot of people might be surprised by, and that is the Nino Brainstorm itself. I'm not running that card. And the reason why I'm not running the card is closely tied to this Ichika counter. What I think about this deck specifically is that there are only a certain amount of toolboxing toolboxing opportunities that you need in this deck. I don't think that there's much value in this, like specifically salvaging any card you want, like the entire game. I think that if you're good enough, if you have like a number of guaranteed quote unquote opportunities to toolbox exactly card you need for the situation, that'll be enough in like the majority of games. That was my reasoning, and with that reasoning, it allowed me to save a slot. Essentially, since I'm running this counter, I don't have to run this Nino Brainstorm, which a lot of people run. Two Ichika. What's standard right now is that people run two Ichika Brainstorm and like 1 to 2 of the Nino Brainstorm. So I essentially saved on the Nino Brainstorm slot and put that towards this counter. And in general, I think it worked out. I think the counter was relevant in almost every single game I played at Anaheim. But I also found it quite good, just in general. Um, I think the other card that is, let's see, there's some. I think I don't know. We could talk about omissions. I guess some omissions are interesting. Um, I think
This
another
is like one of the most important parts of a deck profile, if you ask me. So
right,
yeah,
right.
go for it.
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about one more card before I move on to omissions, cards that I considered but eventually cut. So this global 1500, I know a lot of Quints players cut it actually, both in and this might not be a North, like this might be just like a Europe slash Asia thing. Um, but because I did see some, I do think The one Quints list in top 8 of Anaheim ran a global 15. I'm not sure. I'm not like 100% certain on what the trends are right now, but I do play two of this global 1500. I believe people cut it because they found it too situational, and I probably would agree with that. But I find that when it is relevant, it is extremely powerful, and it essentially swings a lot of those matchups in your favor. Which is to say, any matchup that involves you trying to win board at level 2. I think the global is fantastic, and namely, like I think against Kanata, against the Mirror, they are very good, nearly game winning, honestly. Like, for example, if you're playing a Quints list with global 1500s and the other player is playing Quints and they don't have global 1500s, I think you gain at least like 5%, 10% of like win percentage off that card alone, assuming the card gets played to the board at some point. So that's the reason why I'm running this fifth global 1500. And so we can talk about emissions, I guess. Cards that I am not running. I'm not. We already talked about the Nino Brainstorm. The other reason why I found it hard to keep the Nino Brainstorm in the list specifically, and why I cut it for the counter essentially, was because this deck struggles to. There's a bit of a back row crowding issue in this deck, as I'm sure anybody who's played 8 standby like is familiar with. Back row is a very contested slot in any of these decks. You want your back row to be the highest quality and do the most things for you as possible, or do the most powerful things for you as possible. And in this list, usually your back row is you almost always an Ichika assist plus like some random card. And what I found was I thought the Nino Brainstorm was often the weakest option that could be put in the other slot. And a lot of the time I would play over it or stand by over it, which made me feel like it's a complete waste of the slot, right? If I have to keep doing that. So I was desperately searching for some kind of card to just fulfill the role that the Neo Brainstorm played, and I found it in the counter. So that's why I'm not running that card. Some other omissions include the Itsuki level 0 bomb slash Fukazura. I am not. I think that card is good, but I don't. But I did not like it in practice, mainly because I think red is a very it's a very useless color to splash.
Is that card standard?
Yeah, I mean it's not okay, it's not standard, but I think it is very common. And it's common enough that I think people will wonder why I chose this card over why I chose like the runner, say, over the Itsuki Fukazuro. And the reason is because there are two main reasons. One is color. I think red is a very useless color for your level 0 to be in this deck. Because literally
Yeah, obviously.
everything is red, right? So it just does not. It's mostly a dead color, honestly. And the second is because of I was anticipating a lot of removal, like a lot of hate for cards that have effects that proc when they are sent to the waiting room from the stage. And that's mainly because of Hololive. I anticipated that a lot of people would be prepared to fight Hololive, and specifically the Laplace or Aqua that people commonly run at 3 to 4 of in almost every single Hololive list. So I figured that if people are preparing for that, then this Itsuki is probably never gonna, probably rarely get its effect off. As useful as a bomb is in this list, being able to contest level 0 is always nice. Sorry, being able to contest level 0 like high-powered characters is always very nice. But I figured the runner would do that a little, maybe not as effective at taking out like 4K and higher characters, but uh, still mostly just as effective. And sometimes I think the runner ends up plussing you and gives you blue, which is sometimes relevant because it is very much worth playing the blue 1/1 from hand when you hit level 1. So that's mostly the reason why that card is not in the list. Another thing that I'm not running that a lot of people started running like in the last month or so, again, same as the level 1 counter, is the Ichika Aqua clone. I don't know what to call it. Shenlin Aqua, whatever we're calling that
Everyone
effect.
We call it Aqua because like Assault Lily is super niche and everyone knows Hololive.
I think Shenlin specifically is clock from top though. I don't know. I think most people basically the gist of the effect is when it gets sent from the stage to the waiting room, you pay one clock, send a card to your clock via some method, and then you check the top two cards of your deck and add up to two characters from the top two of your deck, and that card is good, or that card is effective for a certain reason. And that reason is just try fielding every game, like very consistently, very early. It's a very aggressive card. The reason why I'm not running it essentially is the same reason why I'm not running the Fukazuro, and that's because I did not think it would be very common for this card to get its effect off in a meta that is prepared for Hololive.
Mm. I think that's a pretty good breakdown, and I think that the meta read in any American tournament is going to be a significant amount of Quints, significant amount of Hololive. I don't think everything else, like nothing else, can really be said with absolute certainty because some regions will just randomly have a bunch of AOT, some will just randomly have some
Right.
Danmachi, like,
Mm-hmm.
and the top eight is pretty indicative of that. With four Quints and then one of four other titles. I think it was like Whole Live, Revengers, AOT, and I forget what the last one was.
Ruby
Ruby, right,
and
right, right.
AOT. Ruby and AOT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with all this in mind, you're prepared for a meta that is gearing up against Hololive. You have a deck that is pretty good matchup spread against everything short of like Tokyo Revengers, and one hedge against TRV is that it is not an easy deck to pilot. Most people just will misplay badly with that deck, including myself. So, yeah, tell us about the process of getting to Anaheim because you don't live in SoCal, and the prep right beforehand, and then we'll talk about the tournament, I guess, right?
Sure. So uh, so I housed UA. UA came. So UA has been in Texas for the past 3 months, prepping for his store's transition to operate in Houston. And so he flew to me, and I housed him like a week after you left.
Hmm.
And we spent like a week in NorCal. We got to see meet the locals, as in like meet like my wife's locals, and go to some like local tournaments. Uh, I cannot say enough about how great my local scene is now, which is kind of surprising. If you told me this like a year or 2 years ago, I would have scoffed. But I can actually confidently say that NorCal is a really good region for Weiss now. Awesome. But basically, we had my TOs decided to run some. So our store recently started doing more days for Weiss actually in the week, which is great.
That's a that's very unusual.
Yeah,
Most
which is great.
locals only do like one.
Yeah. So specifically, it was a Thursday. They do free play. Our TOs decided in the run up to Anaheim that we would run like uh, some free, quote unquote, free practice tournaments on the free play days, in addition to the weekly local tournaments. So uh, UA and I went to those. I got, I mean, I of course have been practicing for a long time. I've been practicing for this event for a long time, but it was really nice to get more structured practice playing in like event formats in the run up to Anaheim. Um, so that was like essentially my prep, in addition to like playing with UA while he was staying with me. Um, I didn't really make any like so. I think I had my list finalized about 2 weeks before the registration deadline, which is very rare for
Mhm.
me. Actually, it is very rare. Um, it is actually very rare for me to feel like. I think I commented to you that I felt more prepared for this tournament than I have felt prepared in like a long time, and that's true. I think it's been a
I think
long. Huh?
what you said on the like when we were driving, I can't remember which drive it was. I think it might have been a drive back up. You said that if you're ever going to win a Weiss tournament, if you're ever going to get to Worlds, this is your year. I think
Right.
that's
Yeah,
those are the words you
I
used.
think I did
And
say something like that.
and for once in the many proclamations of this sort, it actually managed to come through and the prophecy was fulfilled to some degree. Anyway,
Yeah.
go on.
So my list was like finalized well in advance, actually, which is very rare for me. If anyone knows me, I am a tinker. I like to second guess myself and just kind of like, just kind of like mess around and, oh, this card looks great. Like I want to try it. But I was very confident in the list I prepared. Uh, I basically had it done, so I wasn't really changing the list around. It was more just like getting reps in, making sure that I'm not making like huge like big errors in my play. Make sure I'm playing fast. That was actually a huge thing I focused on in the last like month actually before the
Very
event.
important.
Making sure
Very,
that
very important.
yeah, I think it is very important too, considering 35 minutes are not short, but they're not long either. So I thought it would be very important for me to focus on you know speeding up my play and without compromising accuracy with regards to choosing making the right decisions. So basically, just the last like few weeks in the run up to Anaheim, my prep was just to solidify everything that I prepared, being and fixing any like egregious problems that I saw. But yeah, it was mostly just like tightening up everything and making sure um, I'm not like you know screwing up a lot, which is rare for me. It is very rare for me. Because I'm usually making big changes. And I'm usually wishy-washy on like what deck I want to play, but this time it was a little different for sure. Um, UA of course was testing Dragon Maid.
You say
Well,
that like everyone knows about it.
he was very, uh, he really wanted to play Dragon Maid for this tournament. Uh, what was funny though is that maybe like 3 days after the registration deadline, he decided that Kage was actually might have been the better choice, but registration deadline had already passed, so he was stuck playing Dragon Maid for Anaheim. And yeah, that was like basically a prep before I let's see. The weekend of I went to Hobby Shop Ichiban for their locals. I think it was Saturday night, like literally the night before the tournament. Um where, I guess I did well. I They do like it was like 5 round Swiss and they do like a top cut, so I went 5-0 in Swiss and then promptly lost in top 8 to Key Anniversary, which was maybe not the best practice for an English format, but um,
I mean, all credit to HSI. They run a very clean event, even if the location is look. I went to HSI locals as well, and it took me more than half an hour to get an Uber away because it was
in the middle of nowhere.
presumably just yeah, like it's just such a sketch location. The closest landmark is a liquor store of all
No, it's
things.
a McDonald's.
Um,
McDonald's is right next to it.
yeah, I walked down to the McDonald's. That's how I eventually got a
Yeah,
lift.
yeah.
But anyway, you prepared by playing against some very good players. SoCal has a lot of great players, but
Yes.
Key Anniversary is very not
English.
English.
The
It's
funny
it's
thing
like
is, it was piloted by
NorCal, was
it
it?
was piloted
Was
by
this
one of my. It
Hanson?
was Hanson, yes, Fresh
It
Cabbage, as
was.
he is known on Discord. Yeah, it was Burn One Hanson. Burn One Hanson.
He's standing the eight pants build, which I think is a pretty sick deck, all things
Yeah,
considered.
yeah. Um,
Uh,
classic. I beat him in Swiss, and then in Top Cut, he beats me.
to,
But
to
yeah,
be fair, I think the power level of that deck is actually around English power level. It's not like completely uber busted or anything,
yeah, yeah.
so not
I
not the
thought it
worst thing in the
seemed.
world.
I thought it seemed strong, like strong enough to play,
Mm.
for sure. But yeah, that was basically my pre-event prep. Was there another part of the question? I might have forgotten. Um.
Uh, Look, my personal favorite part of tournament reports is everything that's not the tournament,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what you ate beforehand, Airbnb
Oh,
stories, that
we can
sort
talk
of
about
thing.
that. We can talk about that. So, this event, like usually I'm pretty laissez-faire about like I guess I condition, I guess I would refer to it, which is to say like, am I sleeping properly? Am I eating right? Um, but this event I was more strict than I usually am about this stuff. Mainly because um I don't know. I just felt like I had spent so much time preparing for this, that I would
Don't
feel,
jeopardize it. Not at the
yeah,
last second.
yeah, I would feel terrible if I ended up like screwing up and not getting enough sleep and then losing because I am making bad decisions because I'm sleep deprived, right? Um, so I mostly just attempted to get a good amount of sleep every night in the run up in like the weekend. Like so we were staying in Airbnb, um, and we did this big Airbnb split with my a lot of people from my locals in NorCal and some Canadians that came down um, with to meet UA and then sorry to meet UA. They're like UA's friends. Well, UA and mine's friends from Canada. So like what essentially ended up happening was a lot of them stayed up pretty late every night, and I slept around like 12 to 1 every single night, which is still kind of late, but these guys were staying up to like 3 playing Weiss and like drinking and stuff. So uh, I won't say that everybody should do this because like obviously it's important to have a good time. I think that's the most important thing, and having fun. But for me personally, I really wanted to like focus on making sure there were no distractions for me, no like problems regarding my health, because I have had some health issues in the past like 5 years or so. So I thought it would really suck if the trip or the tournament were derailed by you know me screwing up and like messing up my diet or not getting enough sleep. So I made sure to do those things, and I feel like it paid off. My energy levels were pretty good throughout the entire event, throughout the entire day. So I feel like I made the right decision with regards to the event itself. Maybe sacrificed a little bit of fun I could have had, the days before, but
I
uh,
mean, you can't. I can't speak highly enough of going to bed at a reasonable time before the tournament. Like
hmm.
every single time I've played a tournament in my hometown, I've done better. Part of that is because I don't have to adjust to,
Hmm.
jet lag, travel fatigue. I'm
Unfamiliar sleeping conditions. Yeah.
well, it usually is an unfamiliar sleeping condition. Like it's usually a bed, and I usually don't even know who else is going to be in the bed. But I, get to sleep at 10:30, 11, while everyone else is downstairs drinking and
Yep.
doing whatever. And it just happens that I outplace everyone staying at the B&B Airbnb because I went to bed sooner. That
Right.
me and
Right.
the other guy, me and the other fairly straight-laced guy who I respect a lot and test with. He also does this, and he is the only one who consistently outplaces me out of that particular circle of people. So, you can't say enough about getting good sleep. I think that's a really important part of prep, and celebrate after you win. You don't have to party beforehand. Just do it afterwards. You've got plenty of time.
Yeah. Um. Well, specifically, if I mean, I hate to like prescribe something as like the way to do things, right? It's just like for me personally, the time I feel like the time I spent and the effort I spent to prep, um, I didn't want to waste it. I would feel bad if I didn't perform as well as I could on the day of due to
Hmm.
not getting enough sleep. So for me, it was just like not like a sense of duty thing. It was just like more like uh, I know I would feel terrible, if some something happened as a result of me not taking care of my health. So that was mainly the motivation behind taking this event in that way, taking it that's a little bit more seriously than usual. Um,
Yeah. So, how'd the actual event go? Let's
yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah. So is this where I get to mention my
This is where you get
amazing?
to do whatever you want. I will not interrupt you unless there's a reasonable question, to
Awesome,
be
awesome.
honest.
All right, so day of, we wake up pretty early. Oh yeah, I also, I mean, I don't know how serious this is. I don't know how scientific or how the benefits. I essentially don't know if this is correct, but I feel like it helped me. So basically, like the week run up to Anaheim, I basically my sleep schedule is not the best consistently, on average. I've tried very hard to fix my sleep schedule such that I went to sleep around midnight, and wake up around like 8 or so. Just to get my mind and body in the right like rhythm, I guess. Getting used to like waking up pretty early and functioning properly around that time. So that's like one thing. That's like a thing. So we woke up pretty early around like 7, and I was like a little tired because who isn't tired waking up at freaking 7 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, of course.
But we got to the venue and I felt pretty good, reasonably good for what you'd expect. And I decided as like a way to, so I'm not like too, so I feel very confident, right? I think you mentioned this briefly, but I did feel very confident about this event. I felt super prepared. So for me, like everyone else, I feel like people usually like play warm up games or something, or like test hands or whatever. But me, that day, I decided to do something fun just to like lighten the mood, have a bit of fun. So I decided to. It was actually inspired by one of my locals who was training things. He was trying to get a playset of the Danmachi entry PR, which was a standby climax. It's a Hestia card. I think
it's like $20, $30.
Yeah. So it is very, the art is very emphasized on her feet. No judgment to people. Oh shoot.
Oh no, I'm judging the shit out of people who want that to play that card.
But basically, I think he just wanted he's just a collector of sorts, honestly. But essentially, he was trying to get like as many copies of that card as possible, and he wanted mine, so he asked me for mine. So I'm unsure about what I want or whatever, because I didn't necessarily want cash. But then I see a pair of second cards from the recent Sao anime 10th anniversary set that just released in the Japanese format. And I asked for those. And he's like, sure, yeah, no problem. We do the trade. But then, like, and I'm like admiring these cards because they look so good. Yeah. I think it's indisputable. They look very good. The Sao and LN art is like, I think it's quite good. And Asuna's on the card. I like Asuna. So I'm in a conundrum, right? Because I have a set of Quints movie second cards from the JP set that I've been using since the movie set released like 2 months ago. I've been using these for using these for a long time. So I'm in a bit of a slightly superstitious conundrum. The art on the Sao first second cards is very nice, but I've been using these Quints cards for so long, and I'm playing Quints, so obviously, why wouldn't I play the Quints set? But as the scientist that I am, I decided to run a little bit of a fun experiment. I decided to, it's very reasonable, very logical. I have to decide which set of first second cards to use, and the only way to test which set of first second cards to use is to put them to the test, literally, by asking random people to choose a card from each set of first second cards, and then choosing the set that gives my quote unquote opponent second more often, because that's the goal, right? Everyone wants to go first. We all want to go first.
Peer-reviewed analysis. I'm sure you went through many tribunals and committees to decide your study design.
I asked many peers for review, including the likes of June, Randall, Shizukatsu, Mike Chang. I asked like Bushiroad event staff there. I asked Peter Pan. I asked like some of the judges. I asked like literally everybody that I knew and some people that I did not know at the event to perform the test for me. You know what? And then the best part about this is a friend I know who plays Vanguard. His name is Nicky Goldman. I don't know if Weiss people will know his name, but he is a relatively well-known Vanguard player in North America. UA says he's the best player, but whatever. He's very good at the game. He's also started playing Weiss recently. Basically, he took issue with my methodology, saying that it is easily manipulable. He actually does not like first second cards at all, very much. So he wanted a more rigorous experiment. So what I came up with is this poll that I posted on Global. It cannot possibly be biased in any way, except for the fact that people ended up choosing, as like people started as the votes were coming in, people ended up like the votes. Everybody's not voting at the same time, right? So what I did not anticipate about this poll was that people ended up choosing basically the selection that got the most votes, which happened to be the second option. I did not anticipate this, and neither did he. But in the end, it actually just didn't matter in the results, and I'll go over that in a second. Basically, I made this poll. It is a ship post I am very fond of.
We are determining whether or not Tom can continue to be a moderator. It's just too low quality a shitpost. Our
It was
standards
great.
are
It
pretty
was so
high.
good. How can you be so negative about this post? But
So low
essentially,
quality.
the results were that the pair of Sao first second cards gave my opponent seconds. Basically, I was looking for the difference, right? Oh shoot! I just have to how do I disable this? Close all chats. Okay. Basically, I wanted the set of first second cards that would give my opponent second more times than the other, and Sao gave my opponent second about 9 times more than the Quints set did at the event. So at that point in time, my decision was set. I went for the Sao cards. However, which the thing that is very funny about this is that even online, Sao, like from this poll, Sao ended up giving my opponent second more times than the Quints set, which is great. It's amazing. Very scientific. It's proven.
I'm gonna make sure that there's a timestamp in this video so we can skip over
It's so
this
proven.
travesty of a scientific experiment.
And so I just rolled with the Sao, and I did roll with the Sao for second cards for the tournament. Yeah. Didn't you just say you loved hearing about the non-game related parts of the tournament reports? This is great.
But I'm a man of science, and I will not stand by and let my I don't know what my relation to science is, but this is painful to listen to regardless. Congrats, you sacked your opponents with a rigged pair of first second cards.
They're not rigged.
Is what I'm getting from this.
They're not rigged. They're not rigged. They're not rigged. Anyone who's listening, they're not rigged. They are not rigged. Please.
All right,
Please.
man.
Sao is just.
Rigged.
I guess I'm more connected to Sao as a franchise than Quints, unfortunately. So is a spiritual connection there, for sure. But also very scientific, of course.
I'm sure. All right, let's get past the real nonsense and.
I mean, we can also talk a little bit about what happened after. So basically, I had a buy card as well. I guess. I forgot to mention I had a buy card. My journey towards this victory actually started in August or October, which is where my shop challenge was. Like I got a buy card. I'll have you know, it's actually literally I took the literal hardest road because my very first round of the shop challenge was a true double loss with English time rules. All right, just to clarify, it wasn't just that we went to time and the end of the overtime period. We were literally tied in damage after the 3 turns. 4 turns? 4 turns. Just to clear it up. So I started the shop challenge with a double loss, which is like the worst possible. It's like I think it's the worst resistance for tiebreakers. So
yep.
I had to win out the entire, and I did, but not an auspicious start to the season, obviously. But yeah, I had a shot. So I had a buy card. I actually met fellow global mod / admin Hillary at the event for the first time. and we and some other fellow buy card holders decided to go for a coffee at a Starbucks that was like 2 blocks away. Had a nice chat with Hillary. Um, got to meet some other old friends. Uh, have a nice like cup of coffee during the first 2 rounds, where people were, you know, playing serious games of White Shores. It was a nice experience having the buy card, honestly.
I think buy cards in a game as comparatively small as Weiss just don't function properly. I think they're a really bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but like, it felt pretty nice to me when being the one wielding the buy card.
The buy cards, the best part of the buy card is you get to sleep in. That's the case with every single
Well,
other TCG.
you still have to show up to register, but yeah,
That's the thing. So like the biggest benefit of the buy card in other games doesn't even show up in Weiss.
yeah. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, because you usually reg like
You
on a
just
site.
register online.
Yeah, you register
Yeah.
online. You do the entire thing online. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I had a buy card. So if you see this like report thing at the bottom, let me scroll down a little bit. Yeah. Oh yeah, we can peep the Sow cards. Ooh, look at those. Look at those. Don't they look nice? Okay, they look nice. All right. I guess we can talk about the event now. The actual event.
Go for it.
A lot of extracurricular activity. So my first 2 rounds were buys. You know, buy card.
As you do.
Yeah. um, round 3, I played against I think it was a modified All Life TD. So it was the Luna level 1 combo from the TD with the Kanata, the infamous Kanata TD combo. That was, I guess, a nice first round. I guess it was like, it's not the strongest version of Kanata, but it is like, it represents enough of
When Kanata gets going, she gets going.
yeah,
Doesn't really matter what else is in the
essentially
deck.
yes, yeah. I don't think anything particularly notable happened in that game except for the fact that I got extremely lucky at level 1, where my opponent attacked for. I basically had 2 climaxes left in deck at level 1 when my opponent was attacking into me, and I double canceled 1/2, 1/4, which is very lucky. I actually canceled both on the last damage too, which is obviously very lucky. But apart from that, the game was like fairly standard, I guess. I think
It went as expected.
yeah, it went as expected. I did my thing, which is breaking board and put a lot of pressure on him, and it was a W.
Yeah, if Kanata can't sustain Kanata for multiple turns, the deck is just not as strong as other decks.
Yeah. One thing that there was a decision point. I could have chosen to deny reverses actually, because the Luna combo is an on reverse combo, but I decided that because the Luna combo can like give reverse effects to multiple characters, I decided it wasn't really worth it to open a lane up, because I'm going to be playing the 2/2 to board regardless, attacking with the combo.
Yep.
And that will probably get reversed. So I decided, I'll just let him have all the reverses, save a bit of damage. That was like the most meaningful
That's something
in the game, I think.
That's something people do need to know. Like, you need to be looking at what the expected damage output on both sides is. Not just the cards you save, not just thinking countering is automatically a good thing. Sometimes it is, in fact, the same as not countering. Or otherwise, like, just you got to think ahead in these sort of situations.
Yep. So that was a fairly standard win. Round 4 was against a very not common deck, which is a Adventure Time. They were playing the Standby Princess Bubblegum combo.
Yes, that is the 1/0.
Yeah, and the Finn and
Or the
Jake
one
choice level 3
1/1.
combo, I think. Yeah.
That deck has always felt a little bit non-synergistic to me. You've got to have like a slow, good early game before you can push for an explosive end. It just kind of never made sense to me.
Yeah. They were running the sword, Demonic Sword
Yeah,
Graham, I
Graham.
think. Yeah.
No,
Wait,
Graham
no.
is SAO. This is just Demon Sword.
Sure, sure. They were running the event. They never played it. I don't think they had the resources to actually play it.
Sorry. Demon Blood Sword. I
I see, I
apologize.
see. Um, basically what happened was, yeah, just the standby level one combo. They never got their board going, so essentially what that means is that they will never get their board going for the rest of the game because once
Yep.
Quints establishes board dominance, it basically starts
Runs
reversing.
over.
Yeah, it
Yep.
starts reversing and removing cards with hand on core quite effectively every turn. So I mean, he just couldn't get anything going, and he did double Finn and Jake, but I was like early level two, so it was
Yeah,
just like
that's the issue.
it
You
just
need to like you need to snowball in that deck to get like a damage advantage. That's why you
yeah,
gotta either commit to the 8 standby or go 8 choice or something with adventure time, I think.
yep. Um, there was a possibility of me staying at level two actually after that turn, which was probably his best chance to win, keeping me at level two, so I can't use the finisher. But I took I actually took damage in the right way, so to speak. So I hit level three that turn, and I did my thing, and that
What
was the
a
game.
what a lucker.
Yeah.
All right,
Um,
that's round 4. What
yeah.
happened next?
Round five was against the third place player from the tournament, Mario. I forget his last name. Mario Matthew Torres. Um, it was door AOT. So level one combo is the Mikasa from the new set, and the level three was the Sasha restander with an asterisk. At level three, running the Gabby, of course. Um, it was mostly just like I don't know if there was anything particularly interesting about that game. Um, essentially, what happened is that he got to a pretty good second deck state and just started canceling a lot, and I did not. So he got a pretty sizable damage lead. I hit level three while he was still early level two. It actually was kind of close in the end. I actually had to it could have been a sick anime comeback, but it wasn't. Unfortunately, like I ended up using like the bounce back plus the soul pump ability like two turns in a row, which is not common for the record, just to like get enough soul to like try and win the game. But it didn't work out. He, of course, canceled a lot of it, so that was that was a loss. He played very well, and I've good player, of course, and obviously because he got third, you can't get the top eight and get third. I think without showing that you are a good player potting a good deck. So that is mostly how round five went. Um,
That's one of the less good matchups for Quints too, I think. Certainly certainly not going to run them over very easily.
yes. See, the next round was Bolton Rusia all live. So I think the Bolton it's an on reverse search two ditch one combo, and Rusia is of course the very infamous TD combo, the early play shuffle back salvage combo, salvage like summon combo. Oh my god, this keeps coming up. I am
Yeah,
sorry.
the early play shuffle draw brainstorms into your deck that you're forced to play with for the whole game.
This game was it was very unlucky for my opponent. I think he hit four on his draw brainstorm. He basically so what happened was one first thing is like last two cards in the deck was two climaxes. Always unlucky in the first deck. He
Oof.
brainstormed and he hit two more in the new deck. So like, what can you do? Honestly, it is just super unfortunate. Um, yeah, he just got very unlucky. I was able to capitalize on him not having climaxes in his deck. So I was I guess it was like another round where I was like early level two and he died. Like I won it like early level two. So Not much else to say. Like,
But
yeah, not much to
I mean,
say.
I think Wuxia decks kind of need a very perfect game or very good matchup to really go. And when they win very hard, and they can just Hail Mary
Yeah.
sometimes too. But I'm not a strong proponent of that deck, unfortunately.
There was a moment where he had a chance to really come back because I was not able to refresh. I basically ended a turn with like one card left in deck. So I was kind of sweating. If he had the right climax, then that was his chance to come back into the game, but he didn't have the right climax, unfortunately. So um,
That is
that was
very
like,
unfortunate.
yeah, that was like the notable turn of the game for me. Round 7, next round was I was uh, I played against someone we both of us know very well, Mr. Paddy Wagon himself,
Oh,
Alex Scheifler. It
yes,
was a classic. You know, we're both X1. You're in, maybe because you
Mr.
know
Dream Crusher himself.
seven round. It's 7 round tournament for 180 players. So you know there was going to be a bubble. So it was like a win
No, no,
and
no, no. There's supposed to be 8 rounds for 180
yeah,
players,
yeah, you're right.
right?
Sorry, there's supposed to be 8 rounds, but there was actually seven. So some X1s were going to bubble. We were both X1.
Some X1s, like more than half the
Yeah,
X1s, isn't it?
basically.
Ugh.
So basically, round 7 was like a win, and maybe you're in. Uh, Alex and I had a good laugh about it. You know, uh, fancy meeting you here. Essentially, is that kind of moment. Um, it was a nice, like, it was like a chill round. Not too stressed about it. Playing someone I know. Um, so he was playing Door Choice AOT. So Door, the very popular Mikasa combo level 1, and the Aaron Titan like Icy Tail combo at level 3. His version of AOT was a little different, I think, from the norm, from what I understand. So essentially, his list focuses on double early playing consistently level 2 with the arm and assist, and then changing into the arm and assist. Like that's what he wants to do every game. He wants to establish a strong level 2 board, uh, keep the Aaron stock kicking early play alive with the gear, and just systematically, build a resource lead by removing the opponent's ability to hand on core and winning board every turn. That's how his list operates. Very similar to Quints, actually. If I think about how I characterized Quints at the beginning of the cast, um, so that was his focus. It was interesting. There are some interesting moments in this game. I think the most there are two, I think, pivotal turns. The first one was so I knew we had played some like practice games over the weekend actually. So I got to familiarize myself again with his list because we had played like online by Discord like maybe like a month or so ago. But I had to refamiliarize myself with his build that weekend, and I remembered I had to be reminded about what his counter suite was. He plays a very nasty card, a level 1 anti-change counter. Um, Ditch 2 cost, it kicks the clock. Very nasty. I'm sure he told me he did catch a lot of people at the event with it. Um, but for me personally, I was prepared for it. So instead of attacking with the level 2 combo, as most Quints players are wont to do, I instead uh, played a 1/1 from hand and standby to the back. So I basically attacked with 1/1s that combo turn. And I mean, he had the level 1 counter in hand. I knew he kind of made a little bit of a face, I guess, as he, you know, as I went to attack phase, and then he ditched. He of course like discarded the level 1 the counter later because like became kind of useless after that. So I had a kick out of that. That was like step 1. I think if he had been able to use that counter against me, it's not good. It's definitely not good. um, because how you want to play against decks that have on reverse removal is that you always, as the Quints player or as any standby player in general, that that plays hand on core cards, you always want to present at least 2 characters on defense that have hand on core. So it's very hard to actually clear your entire board successfully every turn. That's very, very crucial. And if you don't do that, then it's basically turns into this like vicious, never-ending cycle where your board keeps getting removed, and you have to like eventually field very low-quality cards to attack with. So very important to have at least 2 cards with hand on core on the board. And I was able to do that. The second pivotal turn, because it's an early play focused deck, he focuses on defending his early plays with the arm and assist, with with counters, right? That is the focus of his list. So even with let's see, so I was not able to get the Ichika assist out actually. So a line of play I like to take against decks that are very good at setting up very big boards that happen to that are also very good at like removing cards from the board to deny hand on core. A very common thing I do those matchups is focus primarily on repeating the level 2 climax combo over and over again. Oh, it keeps coming up. Ah. Okay.
For clarity's sake, Tom is not using his typical setup. He is in Canada. That is not where he usually lives.
How do I mute this? Can I mute this?
Excuse the technical difficulties. He's
okay. I'm just gonna switch to this tab. I'm just gonna switch to this tab with my list on it. Probably makes more sense to do this anyways. Sorry, you were saying something.
Go on. You were no. I was just filling blanks. Airtime. You were talking about your match with Paddy.
Yeah. So right. So a common line of play I take against these like heavy resource trading, board dependent matchups is that I usually use this level 2 combo. I try to repeat it instead of going for a turn where I play for the assist in the back plus like the changer or whatever, focusing on like stacking up my back row with good cards. In these matchups where the opponent has a very good way to set up a strong board and also a good way to remove cards from the board. So in this case, AOT has the Aaron early play, has the arm and assist. So the Aaron early play is going to be very big. It can stock kick on reverse, so it deals with hand on core targets very easily. Against these matchups, I really want to focus on just being able to attack with high quality attackers because that is the win con. And unfortunately, even if I reverse, it's very hard to get rid of AOT's board, mainly because they have so many ways to save it. They have regular counters. They have the gear. So this Paddy Wagon's list runs, I think, 3 1/1 gear, 3 of the new 1/1 gear. So if I try to reverse his Aaron, right, with a 2/2, he will just bounce it back, right, or save it, or like move it, or save it, move it to a different slot, right. So it is a matchup where I need to focus on securing my ability to attack with high quality cards first, and then after I've dealt with the threats, maybe I can get some back row cards in the mix. But in that matchup, I really needed to focus on doing the combo over and over again. This level 2 combo. So there was this turn where I could not get the Ichika assist out in time for the first turn of level 2, mainly because I just had to focus on I had to stand by out the 2/2 in order to be able to contest board consistently every turn. So I don't have the assist. I essentially, to make up for the fact that I do not have the assist, I instead went for a line where I played 2 of this bounce back on the board, and I bounced it back twice. I bounced back both of them when I played the standby, and I gave my card an extra 2k power, which is 1k more. It was like the math ended up being such that I was counterproof against the Aaron early play, which Alex, Mr. Paddy Wagon, was not prepared for. Like, essentially, when we practiced, he was like very used to thinking about the power math for like, the assist, or no, like basically the assist with the power pump, or no assist with 1 power pump, right? So this extra 1k power really put a wrench in his plans to try and win board. I was able to like successfully reverse his important card, which is the Stock King Rare and Early Play. I was able to reverse like the other parts of his board. And I think that was like a huge turn because it's a very board centric matchup. So the person who is able to clear the opponent's board first is the one who is advantaged in that scenario. And from that point on, I was ahead. Like I was ahead, and I was ahead in damage. I was ahead in resources. Not by that much because AOT has a good tap self salvage brainstorm.
Well, why is this a game of small edges? Like, yeah, you can only do so much.
It was funny. Like I asked him after the game, like I asked him after the game if he, what he thought of that play, and he said, "Yeah, I was not prepared for the double bounce back." So, dream crusher, I guess. Unfortunately, because I know Mr. Paddy Wagon had been preparing like more than usual for this event. Like he had been really, really grinding the games. But it was unfortunate that we got matched up in the win and you're maybe in round 7. But
that's just how
that's
it is
just how
sometimes.
that's just how tournaments are. You play good players near the end of the rounds, and sometimes you eliminate like good players that deserve that also that also deserve to be in top cut. But unfortunately, just not how it works out.
Yes.
So yeah, that was the end of Swiss. I was really sweating it actually because I was X1 and there were like 13 X1s or something at the end of Swiss with 2 undefeateds, by the way. So only 6 X1s get in. Only 6, and I was not very confident in my tiebreakers, by the way, because for the record, my round 4 opponent actually dropped.
That's
after the game because he had to go somewhere. Like I don't blame him. He had to go somewhere. Like he said he was going to drop no matter what, but he had to go somewhere. Completely understandable. And I think someone else actually, and the tiebreakers were like completely like really weird for this tournament specifically because I think a 4-1 player had to drop because they got sick. Like they felt very unwell.
Ooh.
And they actually had to drop it.
Huh? That was Paru, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Par. Yes, that super. That is a mega feels bad for him. It really sucks that it had to happen that way. I think.
Oh yeah, that's
definitely
terrible.
affected like I think the way the rounds because I think so. Simu got 8th right after Swiss, but he actually was paired down in round 7. Because Paru dropped. There wasn't an even a number of X1s. So Simu actually had to play versus an X2 player. So that it was just like really, really messed up. Like the entire situation. 7 X1s bubble out of top 8. Simu had to play
like. Sorry, you go on. I'll talk after.
Yeah, Simu had to play a pair down. I'm not sure what my tiebreakers are because my round 4 opponent just like dropped. So yeah, you can go ahead with your thought.
I mean, these all these situations suck like big old donkey dong. Like they're all terrible, terrible situations. But I think a lot of it could have been managed had there been an extra round.
Yes.
Like that's actually just how it would have been.
The hilarious thing though was that I think Simu and Randall and I mathed it out, or I think mostly Randall did the mathing out because he is very used to calculating Swiss brackets. Essentially we talked about it and we basically figured that even if there were an 8th round, because the situation was so like messed up when it came to like because someone dropped a 4-1 dropped, right? I think there still would have been an X1 that bubbled in round 8.
I mean,
because there would have been
because
there was going to be a pair down regardless, right?
1 X1 missing is better than 7 X1s missing.
Sorry, if the pair down wins in either round 7 or round 8, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, if the pair down specifically won, if the paired up player specifically won in round 8, 1 X1 would bubble, which is like so weird, right? It usually does not happen that way, but But I
Yes,
agree.
absolutely.
I agree. Obviously, it should have been 8 rounds. Like 1x1 bubbling is way better than 7 bubbling, of course.
Yes, without a doubt.
Um, I felt it's just a bad situation. It feels bad. There were a lot of good players. All the X1 players are good, obviously. It sucks that they were not like able to compete more for a spot in top 8.
Hmm.
It just sucks. I've been in that situation too. I'm sure a lot of people have. It does not feel good to do well in Swiss and then like get completely bonked by tiebreakers at the very end.
No, absolutely not. It's the worst.
Really sucks. Um, but essentially that's what it came down to. I got, I think, 7th after Swiss. Um, and yeah, it was what was the top 8 again? It was 4 Quints, 1 Ruby, 1 Hololive, 1 AOT,
One
and
TRV.
1 TRV. Yes. What's you know, I knew I knew the TRV player. I knew two of the other Quints players. So it's like what was crazy was like 4 of the top 8 was like basically like we were friends. We were all like buddies.
I mean, good
So
players, no good players.
that was kind of crazy. Top 8 on my top. I guess we can go to top 8. I guess deck check went without any like disqualifications, which is kind of I don't know. Just kind of I don't know if it's common. I don't know if it's uncommon now, but it's definitely a meme. To have at least one failed deck check in Top Cut, right? So nothing. No one got DQ'd, which is great, thankfully. That also really sucks. Getting DQ'd because your deck list is wrong. Yeah, my first match of my top 8 match was against a player I know, a friend. He was one of the undefeateds after Swiss. Name's Ethan Cho. He was also playing Quints. And how did it go? I mean, I don't think it was a pretty interesting matchup because our Quints lists are very different or slightly different. And the ways they differ are I'm running. So basically, what is he is running a Nino Brainstorm. He is also running the early play Ichika Healer, and I think there's something else. He's also running the Itsuki Bomb / Fukazuro, and I'm running. Those are the cards that he is running that I'm not running, and the cards that I'm running that he is not running are the Global 15, the Ichika Counter, of course, and
Yep.
the Nino Runner. Those are the main differences in our lists. He also runs one extra copy of the Icy Tail, I believe.
Ooh, Icy Tail.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
2
fair
copies of
enough.
the Icy Tail. So essentially it actually the match actually, so he's a very good player. I respect him a lot. The match as it usually is when it comes to it's like 2 good players playing against each other, playing the same deck. It actually basically it can either usually come down to luck or like a difference in build, and it did not really come down to luck so much as it was just a consequence of like the difference in like the minor differences in our lists. So I guess before we talk about the techs, I guess how they impacted the game. Oh no, I guess the techs influenced the game from the very start. So basically, I opened Runner, and he opened Itsuki Bomb, right? What ended up happening was my Runner just lived at level 0. I got some free pluses at the very beginning, which is quite nice,
Cool.
actually. Especially in a mirror. He does not run Runner, so he did not get the benefit of having cards live on defense at level 0. The other thing is at level 1. So I talked a little bit about this, but basically, whoever commits their resources and gets their board cleared in these like standby like board dominance matchups usually loses. And both he and I are very, very cognizant of this fact. So what ended up happening was very funny. We played a bit of a game of chicken, um, where we actually just fielded garbage cards for like the 2 turns we were at level 1. We basically fielded a bunch of level 0s attacking to each other. We were very, very afraid because we didn't actually standby. We didn't trigger any standbys at level 1. So we essentially just fielded like I was attacking he was attacking with Ricky. Like we were both attacking with Ricky's at each other. We were both attacking with like a bounce back. We were attacking with like the brainstorm. I was attacking with runners. Like we were basically attacking with the least commitment attackers we possibly could until one of us was just forced to, commit, right? Until one of us was forced to just like, all right, yeah, screw it. I need to attack. I just need to attack with the 2-2.
Yeah.
Now. Like
you got to do something,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. He eventually ended up having to commit first, and because he just ran out of cards, like garbage cards to attack with, right? Eventually, you're just gonna have to commit something.
Yes.
And I think a large part of that was actually due to the runner. So my runner would live through these turns, and so the runner was a card I didn't have to replace. I ended up getting a little bit more card advantage to work with at level 1, so I was able to play this like game of like chicken, attacking with garbage cards level 1 a little bit longer than he did. So he had to commit his 2-2 first. The other interesting aspect of this matchup is this clock kicking Itsuki. Essentially, this is a huge part of the matchup because the ability to remove cards with Hand Core is very big, right?
Yeah, of course. Board permanence, like you said.
We both run this card. He committed his first. I, tried to like fake him out because I basically did not commit this card to board until I absolutely had to. And I guess like against, I didn't have to play to board, so of course like you should always play for these edges. Obviously, he knew that I had it because like you just assume if you're playing against a good player or someone that knows like this matchup, you assume that they have this card in their hand. So that was like a small edge I tried to play for, but it didn't work out. He of course did not commit until he was forced to. But essentially, after the turn he committed, I responded with a shuffle back turn where I was able to get this global 15 out onto the board with 2 1/1s in the front. So basically, it was a blue 1/1 and a red 1/1 out into the front with a Ichika assist in the back. And from that point on, he knew he could not contest the board anymore. Like because 1, he does not run this global 15. And 2, like I think the average Quints player might have tried to contest board after that with like 2-2s, but what that ends up doing in those scenarios, especially because he knew I had a counter in hand, right? That's where the level 1 counter comes in. Like I have an extra copy of a counter that he does not have, right? So I have easier access to counters. Because I just run more of them in my deck. So maybe a worse Quints player would have tried to contest board here and then completely sacrifice their ability to play the end game, right? Because when you're behind and your board gets wiped, you have to spend a lot more resources to try and recoup the board and to gain back the board dominance than the other person does, I think, just naturally. But yes. He essentially decided, he made the call, which was, I think, the correct call he realized the way he wins this game is not by contesting board anymore because he just can't. It's too hard. He decided to just sack the board for the rest of the game and focus on his level 3 turn, which I think is the correct play.
Yeah.
But essentially, like, he was forced into that. That's where like most of the differences between our builds ends. Like that's where the impact of the differences between our builds ends mostly, because the rest of the game was like he does not contest board. He is toolboxing very hard, very aggressively for his endgame pieces, while I'm just like kind of like sitting on this board,
sitting there. You get
for
to
the
do
rest
what
of the
you
game.
want.
Yeah.
That is a really important point as well. Like when it comes to decks that want to have like a fixed late mid game moving towards late game, you should always look at what your best possible board is and how it matches up against other people's best possible boards. And I think that's a big reason why the 1/5 you were 1/5 support you were describing is such a important thing to have.
Yes. Essentially, he was disadvantaged, and the reason why this disadvantage happened in the first place was not because I was like particularly better than him, right? It's
No.
because I'm running this card that that is meant to impact the board at level 2, and he is not. So um,
Mm.
that's how the game essentially played out. I ended up having a bit of a damage lead, which was a little lucky. Like he was like mid level 3 while I was still early level 2. Um, uh, and he like did like a finisher, like a mini finisher turn with 2 Ninos to try and come like bring us to damage parity. But then
Hmm.
the damage lead was just like too much to overcome essentially. So I basically won before he got to his second finisher turn, which was uh, Miku. He had like a Miku Icy Tail in hand, which would have and a finisher, another like a third finisher in his hand, and
Hmm.
he would have gotten like double finisher out that turn because the Miku searches for another copy, right?
Yes.
Basically, I basically won before he got to do his his second plan turn.
Hmm.
Um, that's how the matchup played out. Like that's how that match played out. Um, it
Yeah,
was
pretty good.
super interesting. I think like the way it played out. Like I think the level 1 was very interesting. I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to shake out. And I mean, I'm not. I don't think either of us are in that situation very often. So it was a fun game to play and a fun game I think to think about.
Mm.
Uh, kind of wish it was like recorded because it's like one of those games you. It's like I think it was a very interesting game. So um,
Hmm.
that was my top 8 match. Um, he was the second seed. Yeah, he was the second seed, undefeated versus seventh. Yeah. Uh, so top 4. I guess we can move on to top 4.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, all the Quints players but me died. And the Ruby
Yeah, I
player
noticed.
got knocked
It
out.
all
I
they
would
all
like to
drowned in top
note.
eight. It was funny.
I would like to note, by the way, a little bit of voodoo magic on my side. I did not cheat. Just just to get that out
Keep
of the way.
saying that.
I'm not.
Why
I
do you keep
wasn't
saying
cheating.
that?
Okay, because so after my deck check, right? After my deck was arranged, I pile shuffled in 5 pile. So I had a Quints. I had a Quints mat, right? Like an official like Quints mat that I was using on the day of. I pile
Hmm.
shuffled in 5 piles on each of the quintuplets faces, and I pile shuffled
Huh?
5 times. Just a little bit of you know flow, just a little of extra flow for those
Low
in the know.
manipulation.
Flow
This man.
manipulation, some voodoo magic. Hey, I'm not saying, you know, it worked, but all the Quints in top 8 died but me. So, you know,
All right,
sometimes it
so
is what it
we
is.
need to get it out there that this man is an Ichika stan, and his opinions do not reflect the opinions of the rest of top tier tiers. I just want to make that very clear.
So that was top 8. Moving on to top 4, I get matched up against the third runner up, Johnny Yuen.
Hmm.
Very good player. He was playing Kanata Marin, like a fairly standard list, I think. Maybe you can just bring that up. Oh yeah, we can. Yes, we can. We can bring that up. I think it was a fairly standard Kanata list. Let's have a quick look. From what I could tell, it was like pretty standard. Um, yeah, yeah. This is all within. Yeah, this is all expected, I think. Um, so fairly standard list, fairly standard concept, I would say. A matchup that I definitely prepped for, for this event. Of course, like who I guess wouldn't prepare for this matchup, given how like polarizing it is, given how strong like the end game state is for this deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
what ended up happening here? I think my opener was a little. Oh, it wasn't that bad. I did get a 1-1 out early. Um, what was kind of annoying was that I could not get the clock kick out immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I actually took it as damage fairly
Oof.
early. So I actually had to let the Laplace live a turn. I made that call.
That
Instead
is.
of reversing it with the 1-1,
Yeah.
I let it live.
Give them the
Um,
+1 instead of the plus
+2, potential
and
+2. Yeah.
selection. Like
Yeah.
the value of a Laplace goes down dramatically after turn 2. So
Yes.
I think that I think that that's again, that's something that people need to make the call on.
Yeah. And like also Laplas is very valuable for color
Mm-hmm.
in that deck. It lets you basically decide because like there's not too many good red sources in this deck, so any way to get red is like super important. It didn't end up mattering because he got red. He got all his colors effectively in the end, anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
these are just like small edges that come up in like the large sample games that you should always play towards. Like you should play for a small advantage, I think, whenever you can, because you never know when they'll
Yep.
come up.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I let the Laplas live, and then the next turn I salvage the clock kick, and then I kick the Laplas to clock, denying the denying the check top 2 effect. Um, he got hit to level 2 first, and he did a double Kanata turn. It played out fairly standard. I do my thing, he does his. He did double combo with a single brainstorming back, I think. He played this extremely well, by the way. So I was 1-4 when he did his like thing, right? He knows I have an anti-change counter hand, and the Quints anti-change, for reference for people who don't know, it's a level 2 counter with a very good cost. I had 4 characters on board. First things first. But he played very well around this. The way he did his turn was that he made it so his first attack. He made it so he basically changed after the stock soul. Very important for a few reasons. The first reason is in that game state, if he does not trigger soul on the first Kanata attack, he can attack again. He can front attack again with the second Kanata without running into my anti-change counter. So
Mm.
that's like the very important thing here. He played it extremely well. Of course, and what ended up happening was I could not use my anti-change counter that turn for a good value. The other thing I want to bring up though is that I actually he of course would not account for this because most people are not running this card, but I did have this counter in my hand as well, which is not too common. But I essentially had this. So he played very well around my anti counter. If I wanted to, I could have played this card on the first attack and then set myself to level 2 a little bit earlier than I think he would have expected, and then use the anti-change counter. But I decided that he also made the right call in like front attacking my highest value target first, which is a 1-1, and then attacking my lower value target on the board, which was like a Ricky, I think. He attacked the Kanata into. So essentially, I decided like I could have done this play, but I decided not to. Like spending 4 stock to save a Ricky is not especially high value, even if I get to get rid of a Kanata, because like this deck does not have any problems reversing Kanatas at all, actually. So I just like he played super well around the entry counter. In a different scenario, I could have just like there's like another aspect to this Ichika counter I think is very valuable that ended up like coming up very often in like on the day of and in like in the lead up to my prep, but essentially the damage manipulation from the clock effect, from the salvage effect rather, ends up being very important, especially against good players who play around stuff like anti-change counters, and play stuff like anti-change bombs. It comes up quite often, actually. I was very surprised. you know, so that's like another aspect to this counter that I think is very valuable that I think people should consider. It's interesting. I feel like this counter is so good for so many reasons, but like nobody was playing this deck. Nobody was playing this card except for one player at my locals who I got like I got the idea from him essentially. Um, of course, like, you know, was he using it in the like optimal proper way? No, not necessarily. But the sheer like fact that this card existed, he put that card on the map for me. Like I saw it and I thought about the effects for a bit. Um, uh, and it blows my mind that nobody, not even Japan, played this card. Uh, it kind of blew my mind, honestly. I still don't know why this card wasn't played. You know,
Hmm.
um, like I could just going on a bit of a tangent here, but I feel like it's kind of important. This card is just so good, especially in this meta. I feel like a lot of people miss this card, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of reasons why this card is nice. You can Ricky for it. You can,
Yep.
if you hit on your Ichika Brainstorm, you can get this card because it is an Ichika card. That's another thing that is very important, I think, that comes up because you do like to use the Ichika Brainstorm. And one problem with this Ichika Brainstorm is that it can only search Ichika cards, right? And the amount of like generically playable Ichika cards, and by generically playable, I mean like Ichika cards that can just be played without regard for the game state, is very little actually. Surprisingly, like Ricky, you could search for Ricky, low value. You could search for a Climax Swapper, that's like a little better, but also like fairly situational. But this level 1 counter I feel like is very relevant, especially at level 1 when you're like more likely to just like slam this or spam this brainstorm effect more often. So um, yeah, that's my little aside on this Ichika counter. I think it's a great card. I feel like people kind of overlooked it. Kind of confuses me why they overlooked it, but that's my little spiel.
I mean, let's keep in mind that a significant number of like Japanese players are not amazing at this game. They just copy everyone like like we do. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect that we're all like everyone in Japan is amazing. It's only a certain number of Japanese players who are really really good, you know?
Sure, and I think I brought this up to Yue at some point, and he told me he thinks this card doesn't read particularly well, which is fair. Like, I think there have been a number of level 1 counters that have done this, right? Clock clock yourself when you use the backup for some kind of effect, right? Not
Hmm.
very. I don't think there's a single good deck that has been released with this kind of card that actually ran it. But in this like context of this deck, the way it fits into this meta, and then the way it like synergizes, has like these like sweet little side synergies that work very well with the deck. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it.
it's good.
I think it was a very good card, even if it doesn't like read too well on paper. I think it ends up working out very well.
Hmm.
Um, anyways, Johnny, very good player. Um, probably one of the best Kanata Marin pilots I've played against. There he is on the right, this picture. Um, he played very well around entry counter. What essentially ended up happening, though, unfortunately, so once he did his Kanata turns, I what was it? The pivotal turn here was again using this global 1500. It came up again this round, which is very interesting, you know, because it came up in the last round. Basically, this card allowed me to completely wipe his board, his setup board.
Hmm.
Like he couldn't even counter to save his board. I used what was that turn? That turn I played this anti-change bomb, right? I uh wait, is that right? Play this anti-change bomb. I attacked with like a 1/1 that lived. Yeah, and I think I yeah, and then on like one of the like the second attack or the third attack, I triggered standby and I brought out the global 1500 in the place of this memory interchange bomb, and that was enough to make my 2/2 counterproof against the last Kanata. And yeah, I mean that was like the game at that point in
Yeah,
time. Like,
sounds about right.
um, like getting rid of the Kanata there, forcing the Kanata player to play with lower resources, so they're not able to like effectively heal loop as well. Um, yeah, this global. I would say without this global, this matchup becomes a little harder. So, the fact that it was there for me, um, when I needed it, very important to the
Hmm.
matchup. And then that was essentially the game. I got a little bit of a damage lead off the fact that um, I was able to clear his board over turns. He tried to do this. It was a very similar story, a somewhat similar story as the last game. He pre-played a Marine actually, his final turn, because he was looking to do another turn of like hard playing Kanata, like doing that combo. He's trying to do another turn of it, and
Hmm.
he pre-played Marine. Um, what happened was, um, I used the grappling hook effect of this Itsuki interchange bomb,
Hmm.
and I removed the Marine. I in fact I let a Kanata live on off. Like I let the Kanata live in order to get rid of the Marine that he had pre-played, and he lost on that turn. So we don't really know like what the real effect of doing that would have been, but he only had 3 stock at that point. So I feel like, um, you know, like we're looking for small edges here, and
Yes.
in that particular instance, I think denying a Marine, like an extra instance of the Marine effect, was much more useful than getting rid of the Kanatas. So, um, yeah, and I won on that turn, so it didn't really matter in the end. But yeah, that's how top 4 went. Um, Played against 2 very very good players, who definitely deserve to be in top cut at that event. And my it is very satisfying that my deck building decisions ended up mattering big time when it mattered like the most, I guess. You know, always satisfying when
Hmm.
when it works out that way. So
Yes.
we can move on to finals, I guess.
This is the part that is like you should be anticipating this part the most, but let's just
uh,
Tom can talk about this part. It's
so
like,
so first
yeah.
things first. This is a dub for Northern California. Simu recently moved to NorCal. Actually, like he's been in the Bay. He's been in the Northern California since like 2020. So new to NorCal because he used to be part of SoCal, but now we claim NorCal claims Simu, right? We are NorCal brethren. Um, so obviously the first thing we did rather, when we found out that we were facing each other in finals was obviously we yelled NorCal as loud as we could, and I ran around and looked at all the SoCal players and yelled NorCal to establish dominance because NorCal's the best. Go NorCal.
NorCal is a place on the map. I'll give you that.
That was the first thing I did. Um, it was kind of interesting. It kind of mirrored Swiss in that like I instantly relaxed, right? Like, these were 2 really tough games that I just played in Top Cut, and now I'm playing against someone I've played against a lot, someone that I know fairly well, you know. So it was like it's just another round of locals almost, right? So we made that joke. I made that joke a little earlier. Travel all this way, play through play through 8 rounds, 7 rounds, 7 rounds of Weiss. Travel all this way from NorCal just to replay locals essentially. Um,
I love it when that happens though.
it's great. Yeah, yeah. We even go to the same locals, right? This is great. It was so great. You know, we both play at this shop called Card Art in Santa Clara, California. Um, they Just a quick shout out, I guess, before I get to the thoroughly disappointing actual game. Um, but basically they played a huge role in revitalizing the Northern California Weiss scene. Um, you know, I said it in the post actually that I was like kind of not feeling Weiss this year at the beginning of this year. I was like not. I think I'm sure I've talked to you about it too. I was kind of like tired for a lot of reasons of the game, and I was, uh, in all honesty, I was gonna like quit after the season. I don't know if I told you this, Alf, but I was like thinking about it. Like I wasn't like super down at the beginning of this year for this game, but thanks to this shop and this local scene, this great local scene that's sprung up because of the shop and all the great like new players and newcomers that are so nice and so passionate about the game. Um, I wanted to really play this game again, so it was nice. Finals
But
being
just when you thought you got out, they drag you
yeah,
right back in, you know?
exactly. But it
Yeah.
felt really nice. First, second guaranteed to be like reps of
NorCal.
the
Yeah.
NorCal and also like this like shop that's so great that is like super awesome. I was happy. It was super satisfying. Oh, if I got second here, you know, I lost, but like it's a super satisfying outcome regardless. That's how I honestly felt, right? So I'm
Mm.
I'm like basically all pressure was kind of off. Like, whew, I kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like you kind of just like kind of like everything wound up, but after finding out that I'm playing Simu in finals, it's just like, oh, cool. Um, so that we then proceeded to play the most disappointing game of Weiss that we have ever played. Um, not sure
Tell
how else to
us.
put it. I mean, like, there's a lot of things we could talk about, I guess. I think first things first, the TRV matchup is not, I think, very good for Quints. I think TRV is like, if not favored, like it is like very favored against Quints, and that is mainly because if we're talking about, okay, let me bring up the list actually, because some people might not know what the list. They might not be familiar with what the list does. So this TRV list is a very so he calls it dual laner Pachin. So this list essentially focuses on non-interactively building up a ton of resources with the help of this dual laner card, this Chifuyu. Yeah. Essentially, you generate what 6 stock every. Four of that is clean. 6 stock, like every turn you attack with these dual laners, and you basically keep generating resources until you hit this like incredibly absurd deck state where you're like 7 to 8 in like 15.
It's really good. And then
It's like so absurd. It's actually insane. So you build up to this like critical mass endgame, and you know what? Like even that alone will be pretty good. Just leaving that, putting that out there, like right, like you're is basically a game state where you're kind of just unkillable for like
mhm.
everything. You're hitting like you're probably gonna hit like multiple climaxes on your brainstorm. So you are like super. You have probably have full resources. You have like a bazillion hand. You probably will discard for hand size at the end of your turn. You're refreshing very well every turn, or every deck cycle. The only damage you're basically taking is from like anytime you clock and then any refresh point that you're taking, right? You're essentially
Mhm.
not taking damage from any attacks. That's like the first part of this TRV deck that is very strong. Then the second part is this mostly non-interactive endgame where they play a bunch of on-play burns and attack with this Baji that reads kind of like, why is this card even good? Because it's 8 stock, right? Very rare cost to see in White Shores, but because this deck generates so much stock and so many resources, this Baji is very playable in this deck. You will actually Baji every single game if you want to. The only thing stopping you from playing this Baji is essentially bad luck. and or getting stocks. Like basically, you have to. The only way TRV will not play this card is if it loses before it gets to play it, which is really really absurd. And to clarify, this Baji essentially lets you play this Mikey onto the board with like 6 or 5 markers, something like that. 5 markers. You burn one, so you get a full turn of attacks. You get a full turn. You get some like on play burns, right? With this Mitsuya and this Mikey, and then after that you get 5 burn ones and this like this and an extra attack. It is an absurd end game. It can actually kill people from level 2, like early level 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4. That is the kind of deck we are talking about here. A deck that builds to a critical mass of resources, becomes essentially unkillable, and finishes with a very non-interactive, like very effective endgame. Now you might be wondering, how does Quintuplets deal with this deck concept? And the short answer is that it kind of doesn't. It's a short answer. It doesn't have a way to interact with TRV's Tokyo Revenge's resources. It cannot punish TRV for building so much stock, clean stock, right? Because it has no stock swap available in its entire card pool. So that is like the reason why myself and a lot of other players consider this matchup to be fairly TRV favored. Because once TRV hits critical mass in its endgame, there's essentially no way for Quints to win. There's just no way, unless the TRV player gets very unlucky. So on that topic, talking about the actual game, Simu got very unlucky. That's the game. You know?
There's nothing else to say.
There's not much else to say. To illustrate how unlucky he got, so I opened standard, as Quints is wont to do, with a 1/1 standby turn 1, and another standby trigger like the next turn. So I have 2 1/1s. I have attacked 4 times by my turn 2, the end of my turn 2, right? Because I went second, I believe. He is 1/6. And after his next turn of attacks, I'm still 0/4. So, like, you know, sometimes, you know, this game that we all love to play, matchups, you know, like small edges, sometimes they just don't matter, because that's how the game goes sometimes. And that's exactly how this game went in finals. Like, he just ate it all, and I did not. I got very lucky. I will be the first to admit this. And what's really interesting actually is, so Simu was out. He actually revealed 4 climaxes off this Mill 5 card. This Mikey, he revealed 4 climax. He was out basically 6 by his like first level 1 turn. And he actually came back. He actually got out of that deck spate very effectively, and he refreshed with all 8 at 1/6. You know, I guess it's a little bit interesting because, you know, even though he got very unlucky first deck, he still had a very good shot at winning this game, because he went back, he had a good refresh at 1/6 full clock compression against my deck, which does not have a great way to deal with like. So if Simu could survive at level 2 a little bit, and he could still build up those resources and achieve that critical mass endgame, maybe a level later, maybe a turn or 2 later than he would have liked, but he still gets there, right? However, he gets really unlucky again at level 2. He essentially eats damage all the way to like 3/3 in his second deck. And this time, it wasn't because he was out a lot of climaxes. He literally just took all the damage. I'm at like level 2. He's at 3/3. So, yeah, that happened. Like, you know, sometimes your fortune smiles upon
Sometimes
you,
you are.
and you're just given a game. And that was, you know, that was how the finals went essentially. Like he lost. Like I won when I was at 2-1. Not much else to say. Like
Yep, it happens. Anticlimactic, but must have been a great feeling when that last damage was confirmed, no doubt.
of course, like it was like a. I mean, honestly, I kind of like I was like wound up, right, because of all the like a bit of stress. Like I was wound. I like let some of that go after the top four game, but yeah, it was obviously like a relief, you know, to win. Very gratifying to
Mm-hmm.
win the
No
event.
doubt.
It felt like, you know, it really felt like getting, know, really rewarded for hard work and the effort that I put in. So yeah, it felt good for sure.
Pretty
Yeah.
good.
Now I have to do it all over again for
Now, I'm not
Worlds
gonna
next month.
not gonna ask you to expose all your plans for Worlds, but the logical thing to do would just be to run back Quints, right?
Yeah, yeah. Assuming there's no hit to Quints, which people me have memed about. You know, I hope they don't do that. That would suck. But yeah, I put in so much time into Quints already. I think it would be very foolish of me to, not, strongly consider playing it for Worlds because I have so much time put into this deck. A lot of things are so automatic for me at this point playing this deck. So, and obviously, I would not have as much time to build that up with another deck concept. So, I am hoping I'm hoping I can feel as confident in my deck choice and my choices in the deck list going into Worlds as I did for Anaheim. But obviously, nothing is guaranteed. So we'll just have to see how. Like, I think I'll have to see how Seven Deadly Sins develops. Um, I'll have to think about any potential dark horses going into this event. I don't really have anything in mind other than the fact that I can play Quints if I want to. Um, but right now, I guess I'm just enjoying a bit of a break because
You earned
yeah,
it. Go get some
yeah,
what's the stereotype in Canada? Tim Hortons, is that the one?
yeah. Timmy Horns. I will note actually one thing I did forget about that I did this season that I actually didn't have not done ever. At the very beginning of the season, basically when Quints came out, I decided to literally just play Quints, just
Seems
Quints.
this.
In every single opportunity I could play Weiss, I just played Quints. So whether that's locals, Discord games, shop challenge, whatever, I just play Quints. Outside of maybe like a few weeks ago, I played some amount of like Sora, like Okai, like Sora from Hololive. I played some of that deck, but for the most part, I just played Quints. That was what I committed to. Um, and again, I am loath to prescribe this as like the only way to do this because plenty of people have had a lot of success not doing exactly what I did. So, but in this case, I think it really worked out for me. Like this kind of like discipline that I enforced on myself to kind of like force myself to develop an automatic sense of familiarity with the deck. I think it worked out pretty well. Obviously, I was very lucky in that because some decks, some sets, like sometimes a deck can just like fall out of favor, right? That happens due
Of
to like
course.
meta changes. Like for example, if I had decided, say like if I decided that I was gonna play like Rushia, right? Like I,
Uh,
I
y-
obviously like I'm not gonna like that. That was if I had done that with Rushia, like obviously I think I would have realized midway through the season that like that deck is not for me. That deck is probably not the play, not the best Hololive deck by any stretch. So, I did get a little lucky there, right? Deck I chose ended up being very strong at when it was released and very strong all throughout the season, very relevant. And it also had the card pool to kind of evolve with the meta as like players got used to playing against it, as new sets came up. That was also kind of scary, right? AOT released in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Um, so not even like, I guess across seasons, I might not have this luxury, right, of being able to just like decide to play only this deck the entire season. But
Mm.
in this case, I think I was very fortunate to have been able to spend so much time playing and thinking about this one deck. I even ignored like JP format. I didn't even play JP format. Like
JP format sucks
like
this last
like
half year. It's
I
fine.
basically I kind of kept track of the JP meta because I like talk like I play Weiss, like I talk to Weiss players, right? They would tell me stuff. But like as far as like thinking about the JP meta like I have in the past, I didn't even participate in the WGP like online Nats at all. I was not even thinking about Japanese format this entire time. Um, Strictly focused on the English format, playing Quints into like this field that I was anticipating. Um,
Mm.
that was like I think sorry that was a huge part of my prep that I think I forgot to mention, by the way. So my bad, I guess. But yeah, that was like I think another thing that I think was very important for you know how well I ended up doing, I guess.
Mm. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean
It's a
it,
good run.
it
A
was
really
nice.
good run.
It was nice to finally get a win, I guess.
It was a long time coming. You came second at Nats that one time in JP, and I mean, this time you just did really well. What can I say?
Yeah. Actually, my first BCS top two, which is cool. Um,
You don't need to specify top two. You won the damn thing. Anyway, look, I am really glad to see Tom winning. The way I found out that he won was that out of nowhere, I was like coming home from work, and I just got a message from Tom, and he's like, "Well, I guess we better go and do a podcast now." And it's like, okay, well, this means what? This means he at least top aided because, like, obviously, that's what it means. But like, I was really hoping he had won because there was no news anywhere. Not that there would be news. That's not like something you'd expect. But I asked around and it's like, oh yeah, oh, Tom won. And no one was talking about it. I must have missed the festivities. But I was so happy for him. He worked so hard. He deserved everything that he got. Like I think it's just a really excellent achievement. I hope that he's as happy as I am for him. He's been grinding for so long and it's really hard to get anywhere in Weiss a lot of the time. It really is. So kudos to him. I'm really glad that this all ended up the way it did. And I really hope that it's victory to victory. It's not likely given how difficult the field is going to be by comparison, but you never know. You never know.
um, thank you, Ralph. Yeah, hopefully my prep for Worlds is fruitful. That's what I'm hoping. Regardless, I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna be able to meet a lot of people for the first time, actually, that I have never met before. I'm super excited to meet Christian in the flesh. Um,
Oh, you've not met him. Oh,
I've
even
never met
I've
him. I've never met him.
I
So
met him in I met him in Japan. So there's that.
there's a bunch of players, but like, yeah, I mean, Christian is the one I've known the longest, and I've never actually met. So it'd be super great to meet him finally. Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking to you about this, but like, I would have been super sad if I did not qualify for Worlds at the very least from this tournament because
Mm.
um, this would be like the first time. This would be like a really good chance. Like so, like first for reference, right? If you do not get first at one of these events, you do not get a sponsored invite. You don't get a flight or accommodations, right?
Oh, geez, you would have to have gone
Um,
to LA all the way from NorCal. Oh
Right.
my
That's what
God.
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So that's why, like, so usually I think if I gotten like say I got second or third at the usual BCS, right, in a typical year, I would have to like find my way to Japan, which is not cheap, by the way, um, not cheap at all. which I was not. Normally, I would not look forward to like figuring out how to do that, especially with, like, not just like the cost of like travels, but also just like figuring out like vacation time and like paid time off, stuff like that. So the fact that it's happening in LA this year meant I could go second or third in the event and like be happy with that because I going to Worlds, it's like very cheap for me to go to LA, very accessible. I still get, and then I get to meet all these people that I've been wanting to meet for a really long time. So um, yeah, I ended up
It's
winning,
great.
but like
It's going to be a great experience.
I would have been super satisfied with second or third because like to me, like what's maybe more important than winning or doing well, obviously that feels great, but like just like getting to meet like cool people that I've met over the years, like through like online channels like Discord, it really meant a lot to me to be able to go to Worlds as like a competitor and to like meet them and play them, right? Some of them for the first time in person. So, um, even if I don't win or do like, even if I don't, I would hope I do well at Worlds. But even if I don't do well at Worlds, you know, um, I'm sure it'll
No,
be a
it'll be good.
great. I'm sure it'll be a
Worlds will
great
be a great
experience.
experience,
Yeah,
no doubt.
it'll be great to meet all these people. So yeah.
That was a look. I think it was a really in-depth review of everything that's happened. I think it's really important that this all gets out because it is a really difficult thing to debrief from, especially because it's not like you're finished. You still have another whole tournament to go. So let's keep going strong. Hopefully everything keeps going well. Hopefully you don't have to change deck. That would be honestly disastrous at this point in time. And look, I hope all the listeners will also wish Tom well. Wish him at least a good trip, if not to do well in the tournament. Some of you, I'm sure, are competing in the tournament. Good luck to everyone who has qualified. Good luck to everyone who is traveling to LA. And I hope you enjoy the city. I just got back from there myself. It is truly one of the cities of all time. I will say that much. Um, but you'll have a great time because you're going to be with friends who all play the same game you do, and you will enjoy yourself. So uh, we don't want this going on forever and ever. It is still kind of a podcasty thing, so let's call it there. I once again, congratulations. I hope everything continues to go well. And yeah, here is a really important part, I think. What shout outs do you have for
Yeah. Okay. I guess shout out to you first. That seems appropriate. I've known you for a long time. I've played this game
I
also for a
I
long
did
time.
I did literally nothing except distract you for a week before this tournament, man. Like
I mean, I
uh,
I mean, you've always been kind of like a straight man to some of my nonsense, and I really appreciated, the talk we had, um,
oh yeah.
before
Look,
the tournament while we were driving back. So, I mean,
yeah,
apart from that, you've always been, supportive, a good friend. So, um, it's nice to, you know,
ha- nice to have friends. Yeah. No,
yeah, yeah.
and I appreciate it. This is one of those weird, miraculous friendships that wouldn't come around without the advent of the internet. And look, it's one of the greatest features of the modern era. You get to make really good friends, worlds away from you. It's just an incredible thing.
Yep.
And yeah,
Um,
here's to many more, right?
yeah. And I guess after that, I mean, I think my post had a lot of this. Oh my god, post these. Post had a lot of these. Obviously shout out to UA. know, a lot of this is just not possible without him. So, of course, he was the first person I thanked. A great friend throughout the years. Um, really, I'm definitely not as good of a player without his support and help. So, you know, much thanks to UA. And of course, I have to thank Card Art, both the owner as well as like the TOs that run Weiss events there, as well as Simu, because he also like has a like there's a he runs a locals that is much closer to me, like maybe 10 minutes away versus like 40 minutes away. In the case of Carter, um, you know, NorCal has not always had a great Weiss scene. I think I've talked about this to a lot of people. The scene has never not always been very satisfying to play in and compete in. So the fact that it became this good this quickly this year was a super huge help to me. Um, it
It
is
was a really
no,
good locals. Like it was really well stocked and everything, even
yeah,
at
yeah.
singles.
And people are so friendly. It's super nice. Uh, they're all super enthusiastic about the game. Um, most like it is hard. I think I realized this year how important a good locals is. Not only to like improve the game, but also just like it is super hard to find motivation to continue playing this game if you don't have a good local scene. Good like
Yeah,
players to
here.
play with, right? Um, I have seen stuff recently that makes me feel even more thankful for the fact that this locals is so good and makes me feel even like it really makes me feel for the people I saw talking about losing motivation to play the game because their locals is not as like fulfilling as they want it to be. It really sucks to be in that position because it's not like you can justify moving house for a new Weiss locals, right? So in most of the
No.
cases, you're kind of stuck with what you have. So I'm super. I am. It is. I cannot express how thankful I am that this locals exists. Honestly. So that's like the first. That's like the second thing,
Did
or
you want to shout
third
out
thing.
the name of the locals?
Yeah. The shop is named Card Art in Santa Clara. If you're ever in the Northern California area, we have Weiss locals on every Sunday, and free play every Thursday. Everyone's so welcoming. I'm sure if you have any questions about participating in anything, we also have they also have had like really interesting like tournaments. Like there was like a for the to inaugurate the shop. There was like a 1K uh, tournament that they held for Weiss and like a bunch of other games. Like every game had like a 1K prize pot. So that was cool. A cool way to like drum up interest and like obtain a player base and like keep people interested in playing there. Um, yeah, card art in Santa Clara. I cannot say enough about how lucky I am that this locals
Hmm.
exists.
All right. Any shout outs outside of NorCal?
Sure, yeah. Uh, really have to shout out the SBTCG team, the Weiss players, and Nikki Gold. I guess I also talk to Nikki a lot. I enjoy their camaraderie, and, you know, their knowledge of the game. Being good discussion partners about like stuff regarding the game. Being able to play against them is super helpful, super useful. Um, uh, of course, I'd also like to thank like Tony. He does not play Weiss as much anymore, but he's one of my good friends. Has been a good friend for a long time, and even though he doesn't play Weiss that much anymore, it's always nice to have a
Can
friend
you
like him.
imagine if he wasn't stiffed by job issues and we had a party house in NorCal? Can you imagine how good that would have been?
Ah, sheesh. That would
Uh,
have been great.
missed missed opportunities. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's oh well.
I think that's it for my shoutouts. Uh, yeah, I think that's it.
No, it's a good list. You did really well. Hopefully you continue doing well, and I hope to hear good news about it in the future. Between you and Christian, I think I would rather you win, simply because it's funnier when Christian loses.
Uh,
And outside of that, I think we'll call it there. Thank you all for listening. It's been neat as usual. It always is with everybody. So hopefully everyone's gonna have a great Christmas and a great New Year.
yes. Happy holidays, everybody.